The biggest threat to our way of life, particularly in the West, is something that is hidden from most people. Not on purpose, but it's just not top of mind when it comes to people's analysis and thoughts about the future, but it should be. Because we have the most serious problem, particularly threatening America in the West. Well, I believe in the history of America, and it's going to impact everybody, whether you're on disability, whether you're on Social Security, whether you're on a 401k, whatever other things that you're involved with, spending veterans benefits, all that type of thing. SSI, SSDI, it's all a part of the whole equation. You want to listen to this? Let's get into it today. And a very good morning to you. If you're not subscribed, it's a good time to get subscribed. Subscribe and hit that bell for all notification. We go deep here on some of the things that lurk behind the background that, well, they don't make the big news because they're not splashy. It's not the president at the craps table at the circa in Las Vegas, and it's not photo ops or congressional hearings on cabinet members, right? Or splashy, big splashy entertainment news. It's that behind the news things that really escape detention because they're hard for people to mentally grapple with. So they get a wide pass in society. And the one I want to talk about today is the debt situation that we face in the future. This video is a requested video. Not only was I tagged into it, but I was also asked, because I did speak on this last night on last night's live stream. All the more reason you want to be involved and check out some of these live streams when I'm doing, because sometimes we have some great conversations. Sometimes we're just goofing off, cooking crab or whatever, and having a good time, having a few drinks. But our lives are definitely going to be impacted, and probably in a sooner amount of time than we think of. And it's the amount of total accumulated debt of the United States government in total, which is probably approaching something on the order of, it was 36, it's probably going to be $40 billion by the end of 2025. And you might say to yourself, well, so what, right? My electric still works, right? The gas still comes on. I'm comfy at home. I still got my car. I still got my job. Very true. But there's things that lurk that do what I call, they reach a break point where all of a sudden things are good until it just goes bad. We think of the crash of 1929, when the jazz age and the so-called age of plenty and the roaring 20s and all that, and everybody was happy, right? Everybody was getting rich. Well, the real reality is you had a situation far similar today where you had an oligarchy of very wealthy people, not because they set out to be, but because they had good economic ideas in their head, capitalized on them, and, well, the public swept into it and loved it. Facebook, Amazon, right? The list can go on Google and YouTube. The list can go on and on. They didn't force these things down anybody's throat, but they became incredibly wealthy. And the distance between the wealthiest in society and those just struggling became greater and greater. And we know down here, this struggle is real, because we know that really good jobs are not readily available. I'm not going to get into immigration and the pressure that puts on wages at the low end. We'll save that for another topic. And you definitely want to hear that, the political background of that and what I think the thought was on that. But let's stick on our subject of interest rates today, because they will impact you. Debt is okay when it's rising in a normal amount, but when the issuance of debt or the use of the credit card of the nation becomes commonplace, right? It becomes built into our budgets every year that we need to borrow, $500 billion, $500 billion, $1 trillion, $2 trillion in a year. Man, it really adds on fast to the debt. And basically, we're not taking in enough revenue, right, to cover our expenditures. Now, tariffs, of course, are perceived to be one way to do that. And in the long run, they have pluses and minuses to them. But we're not generating enough wealth here to keep up with our expenditures. We have an aging population here that's going to really terrifically, as the baby boomers hit, in their 70s, and medical costs rise exponentially. Right. We've had a lot of war. We had a lot of veterans engaged. Veterans benefits are going up, which is as it should be. We should always take care of our bravest and finest. But also the number of people on the security net of America taking disability or supplemental food benefits, food stamps, Section 8 housing, things like that. As people's ability to thrive and be able to purchase housing on their own or rent housing on their own diminishes, as that goes down, right? The need for the government to step in and hand out vouchers, hand out supplemental food stamp cards and things like that rises in the nation, right? To give out more and more health care because it gets more expensive and we can't afford it, right? Right? I mean, that's what government does. Well, it didn't do it before, but since 1933 and the New Deal, that's what government does. It throws itself into the breach. It's involved in every aspect of our life, and it's really created, and a lot of people get uneasy when they hear this, but it's really created the greatest Marxist state in the history of the world, where the government is involved in more and more aspects of people's lives, particularly these days we saw with all the gender wars and all that type of thing, that even government has now stepped in some states to separate parents from children and things, and put the state school authority as the ultimate to decide the best welfare for the child. Well, if you believe that has good outcomes in our schooling system today, you want to go back and watch my education video on there, because there's a whole different agenda at work in there. It's serve yourself first and then the students. But let's get it more into this debt. As you can see this chart below, debt has been rising what I call exponentially through the 60s and 70s. And early 80s, you saw the gradual slope. And then, like any mathematical equation of a parabola, it starts to gain, and pretty soon it's accelerating in almost a straight upward movement. That straight upward movement is unattainable. It can't sustain for the long time. There's no such thing as a freestanding parabola, right? What goes up comes down. As Napoleon famously quipped, you can do anything with a bayonet except sit on it. Okay, well, let me tell you what, that's a bayonet that we don't really want to see, but yet it's there as we approach $40 trillion in debt. Now, interestingly, in the first week of President Trump's presidency, he has come out and jawboned about interest rates have to come down. He's looking at Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Secretary, and saying, inflation is dead, push down, get these interest rates down. Well, they may or may not come down, but don't lose focus on where the prize is. The prize isn't in short-term interest rates. Short-term interest rates benefit banks. They can borrow cheaper and lend to you and enjoy that spread between cheaper money and, writing new loans at the old rates for as long as possible. Right? Short-term interest rates benefit the hot money that needs to have money somewhere for 30 days. Okay, 30-day government, 60, 90-day obligations. It has no impact really on you on the outside, on your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card loans. What ties into that is the 10-year note. And, as this long-term chart shows from 1980 until 2020, interest rates had declined precipitously and without wavering over that 40-year period till we got down on the 10-year note at 0.7%, 0.7%, believe it or not. Well, that party's long over. Over the last couple of years, we rose and touched 5%. We dropped back to about 4%, and now we're up around 4.62%. That has tremendous implications because, government debt that comes due will no longer be rolled over or reissued at 0.7%. It'll be issued at 4.6%. Why? Because that's what the market demands, right? That's what buyers overseas and in other nations, they're buying a free market float of interest rates here. That's something that the president cannot affect. And therefore, it's kind of useless to talk about the short term and the lower interest rates on the Fed funds rate and, all that. The real action is hidden from you in the 10 years. It's one thing that I continuously pound on in my discussions week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. That's where the rubber meets the road, okay? And as this unfolds, this is another reason you really want to be subscribed to see this unfold as it comes, because rising interest rates are the biggest threat to our economy because, well, as the Broadway song says, something's got to give, something's got to give, something's got to give, something's got to give. And right now, our interest spending is getting very close to matching and coming up to the level of our defense spending. And that should raise critical alarms to everybody. Now you say to yourself, well, okay, so what happens? What's the practical outcome of all that? That's going to be our discussion in part 2. Let's try to look ahead. Let's stand on the bow of the ship looking out, and let's try to see what's coming and the way that we will deal with it when we see that iceberg dead ahead. What choices will the government have at that point in time? That itself is a whole discussion. So you want to be a part of that. So thanks so much for watching today. And a lot of people have really been surprised how many people have been enjoying these discussions. But forewarned is forearmed. And anybody that sits out there and collects benefits or does it and is not aware of what's going on really needs to wake up and possibly start to make adjustments to their life for self-protection mode and things like that. We have too many people that just drift through life and think everything will be okay because everything was okay. And well, let me tell you, civilizations rise and fall throughout the course of human history, and there's no guarantee that anything ever lasts. Once again, your thumbs up are appreciated. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks, everybody.